8 years ago today, 3,000 children lost a parent in an hour. And the people up there called the young and the reformed, and the terminology must be baffling to you because understand that from those of us who are on the inside, reformed is equal to Calvinism, okay? So just mark that in your head. New Calvinism and young and reformed, same thing. The people on the inside of that, if asked, as I was, to sit down at KTIS and field calls the next morning, okay, where was God? 9/11. Our answer is not that he was helpless and couldn't stop it, okay? That's a given inside this thing called the New Reform. God is not helpless. He's God. With one word, he could blow this plane off its path. 60 feet. If God can't blow a plane off its trajectory, he's not God. So the New Reform people don't go there. We don't solve problems like 3,000 kids lost a mom or a dad or both because God couldn't do anything, or he's cruel, or he's stupid. We just don't go to that solution. We say to those kids who are now 8 years old or 16 years old today, the God who was sovereign over that moment, in charge in that moment, ruling in that moment, all wise, all good in that moment, has the power, has the wisdom, has the goodness to help you make something out of the life that has been so hardly dealt with you. So that's the kind of approach that we would take. It's I think, as Colin was trying to say in his last moments, felt first as controversial and then as profoundly steadying in a world like ours. So I didn't plan to say that. That came to my mind while I was sitting there. Here's what I did plan to say. I'm going to give you a 1-minute summary of Calvin's life, because I don't assume you even know anything about John Calvin. Number 2, 3 things about Calvin that I think are powerful in the resurgence of the new Calvinism among younger people today. And number 3, a cartoon from Arlo and Janice, and an advertisement from Nature Valley granola bars, and why they are so relevant to Calvinism. First, the summary. Calvin born this year, 500 years ago, July 10. That's why it's such a big deal this year. He is celebrating his 500th birthday in heaven today, I believe. And then he moved from Noyon, where he was born in France, to Paris, where he was training as a lawyer, and suddenly the damnable doctrine of the Lutherans captured him, because Martin Luther was now about 50 years old when he went to Paris, and he had already begun what was called the Reformation against the Roman Catholic Church because of all of its corruptions, they understood. And so a reformation of the church, that's where the term comes from. The church, the Catholic Church, was being reformed. And what came out of that is the Protestant church. And so Luther and Calvin are the twin pillars of Protestantism, or the Reformation movement today, with all of its splinters all over the place, of which this is one. He was converted to the Reformation teaching and left the Roman Catholic Church, became a professor of sacred divinity and a pastor in Geneva, Switzerland for about a quarter of a century. And then when he was 55 years old, he died, having married Idolette for 8 years, had 3 children who died in childbirth. It was a very suffering, tragic life. For your own research, if you want a quick read on Calvin, T.H.L. Parker's book, John Calvin, republished recently from 50 years ago. This is the book I cut my teeth on, so that's a short read on Calvin. The Portrait of Calvin by T.H.L. Parker. This year, this will be the leading commentary from Yale Divinity School, Bruce Gordon, just published a few weeks ago, John Calvin. If you want 500 pages, this is the one probably to get. If you want Calvin, this is the book everybody knows. These are the institutes of the Christian religion. And everybody knows this is why he made his impact. He preached 10 times every 2 weeks. For example, 123 sermons on Genesis, 353 sermons on Isaiah, 200 on Deuteronomy, 159 on Job, and on and on. He was mainly a preacher, but he did systematize the Christian religion into 2 big volumes of 1,800 pages total. And if you want to know Calvin, this is the place to go. If you want to know him secondhand, what the Prime Minister of the Netherlands in 1899 said to Princeton University in the most famous lectures on Calvinism called Lectures on Calvinism. It's Abraham Kuyper, Lectures on Calvinism, and you can get it at Amazon. It's 100 years old, and he shows how Calvin made a massive impact on the Western world. What you've heard of as the Protestant work ethic, that you're all Calvinists in one sense. Jewish, Roman Catholic, you're all Calvinists in one sense because you're driven people, you're honest people, you take responsibility, you're hardworking, and that didn't come out of nowhere in pagan Europe. I mean, we were all savages once upon a time and wouldn't be who we are today, I would say, not just because of the Renaissance, but because of the great movement of the church and the Reformation. So that's enough on Calvin. Now, 3 ideas of his that are lively today. And I'm choosing these totally subjectively because I love them, okay? I'm one of these guys. And I am witnessing, not just reporting here. Number 1, he was totally committed to the authority of the Bible. So I brought one of those along. This is a Bible. Calvinists, this group here, they believe what's in here, all of it. Got to understand it carefully. There's poetry in here, and there's literary genres in here of all kinds. There's parable in here. We're not stupid, but we believe that when God inspired this, it makes it true forever. So that sounds weird, to the world. Calvin based his preaching on that, and if you want to understand the new Reformed people, they preach the Bible. They really believe in truth. There's true truth, capital T. And if you want to know where it is, it's in the Bible. And so that marks Calvin, and it marks us today. Let me read you a quote from Calvin. When we enter the pulpit, it is not so that we may bring our own dreams and fancies with us. So when I stand in the pulpit Sunday after Sunday, 1 mile from here, I'm trying to tell people what this book says. I tell them, don't give a rip what I think. Doesn't matter at all what John Piper thinks. For goodness sakes, I'm fallible, I'm sinful, I get mad at my wife, I'm not a perfect dad. Who cares what John Piper thinks, for goodness sakes? But what God thinks really matters. So I just point to this book all the time. So there's a flavor of what you're going to bump into if you go from Seattle to New York to Washington to Louisville in these churches called the New Reform. They're going to have Bibles in their hand. You say, let's preach. People flop their Bibles open. 5,000 Bibles go open. That's strange. People think these are schools because people carry Bibles to church on Sunday. So that's number 1. Number 2, the second theme of Calvin's life that is true is the centrality of the gospel. That is, the center of the Bible is the gospel, meaning that we're all sinners and deserve damnation because we've so dishonored God and so brought reproach upon his name by either ignoring him or scorning him or giving him 2% of our time, and we are wicked because the greatest person in the universe has been so dishonored by us. We all know it's wrong to dishonor people, and God is infinitely worthy of all of our honor, and we don't give it to him, and therefore we're all damned, and God loves us anyway, and therefore, so that he won't have to justly punish us in hell, he sends his Son into the world, and that Son, and this is what the Reformation captured, did a massive substitution thing. He substituted his righteousness for our sin, and he substituted his punishment for our punishment. And Calvin put it this way. This is on the doctrine of justification, and it goes like this. It is entirely by the intervention of Christ's righteousness that we obtain justification before God. This is equivalent to saying that man is not just in himself, but that the righteousness of Christ is communicated to him by imputation, while he is strictly deserving of punishment. Thus vanishes the absurd dogma, this is the way Calvin talks, that man is justified by faith inasmuch as it brings him under the influence of the Spirit of God, by whom he is rendered righteous. You see that our righteousness is not in ourselves, but in Christ. So that's the doctrine of justification. It was the main issue in the Reformation, and getting it right really matters to these young Reformed people. Number 3, the emphasis on the glory of God. God is infinitely valuable and infinitely glorious. That means beautiful in his manifold perfections. Ayn Rand, Atlas Shrugged, second most influential book in America after the Bible, probably, according to Amazon, said, she's an atheist, dead now, but was alive just, I think she died in 82, said, admiration is the rarest of pleasures. I think she's probably right. And I would say you're made for it. You are made to find ultimate satisfaction in admiration, which means it's not about you, it's about the one you admire. And it's God. God created you to admire him. And so now we're at our cartoons and our advertisements, and I have 2 minutes left. So here's the cartoon. Where's my cartoon? Here it is. Arlo and Janice. Night, snowing. Arlo, this is an old man and woman out in the snow. Hey, looking at each other, looking up at the stars. It's so quiet. Yes. And then he says, as they walk away into the night, ever notice that the best moments make you feel insignificant? Now, it may be cheating. I don't know who wrote this. I don't know whether the author of this cartoon is a Christian. So if he is, that's cheating. So forget that. Let's go to the advertisement. I know these guys are not Christians. This is torn out of the page of National Geographic. And this is an advertisement for Nature Valley Trail Mix fruit bars. And here's a picture of a mountain and a vast terrain. And up at the top of this peak here is a tiny little figure. 2 of them, a person. Male or female, you can't tell. Arms stretched out with ropes hanging down. They just conquered this incredible precipice here. And they look, standing up there, unbelievably fragile, like they could topple off any moment. Okay, now they're selling granola bars. And it says at the top here, somebody's got to explain this to me. I think I know what's going on here theologically, but you may have another take. You've never felt more alive. You've never felt more insignificant. What in the world are they telling their possible granola bar eaters that they're insignificant? What is that? How do you sell anything like that? How do you lead a movement like that? It's because New Calvinists believe, I believe, that you are made to find your ultimate joy not in being significant, but in knowing the infinitely significant.